What is UX research? No, seriously, what is it? Can someone tell me? No, I'm just kidding. I will do my best to define what UX research is and what it means. Is it a job title? Is it a way of thinking? Or is it something else? What does it mean to do UX research? What does it mean to be a UX researcher? So we'll try to dissect this term. Now, before I get into what UX research is, just being aware that maybe a few years from now, it might be called something else, or there'll be groups of people who want to specialize and call it something else. Who knows? The title keeps evolving. Whether it's UX research, user research, customer experience, CX, service design research, experience research, human factors research, or something else. For all intents and purposes, I will refer to what we'll talk about as UX research. Now, in order for me to tell you what it is, let me tell you what it's not. It's not about designing wireframes. It's not coding or programming. Unless you're a quantitative UX researcher who needs to manipulate data in R, you don't need to program. It's not A/B testing. It's not usability testing. It's not asking people what they want. It's not collecting data and pain points. Wait a minute. Is this guy for real?
Wait a minute.
Maybe your eyebrows are raised. Sure, what I mentioned are methods that researchers use, but that's not the whole picture. And let's go on a little side quest, a little tangent. There's a little semantic debate on the term user testing. How you frame research as a practice to your stakeholders is going to be pivotal. As long as you explain to your team that we're not testing the user, it's all good, because we test our products, our services with our users. You don't test the users. Got it? English is hard.
Right. What did he say?
So, what is it? It is the study of people's behaviors, needs, and motivations through systematic methods, with the purpose of guiding the design and innovation of a system. For those of you who did basic science experiments as a kid, you may be familiar with the scientific method. You have a research question, you conduct some background research, aka literature review, you formulate a hypothesis, you define your objective, design your procedure with certain methodologies, and once you've collected your data, you analyze it and you present the results. If you've ever read a scientific journal article or paper, this is pretty much the format in which they write. Now, compare this to the UX research process. Whoa! The research process is pretty much the same, except we do the research with specific business goals in mind, and we need to make actionable recommendations. The difference between academic research and UX research is, I'm just generalizing, okay? One is for the pursuit of knowledge, and the other is business pursuit. So, at the core, UX research follows the scientific process and is the foundation of product development. Without proper research, your design is just a pretty art project. UX research is also not just about fixing existing problems and making them better. As much as we are problem solvers, we are problem spotters too. Or put another way, opportunity spotters. As Henry Ford may have said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. We've all heard it before. Usability testing and evaluative research are great. We need them. But inherently, we are focused on an existing concept, an existing idea. To truly innovate, we need to discover new problems, discover new questions with foundational generative research, which we'll talk about later. We will identify opportunity spaces and work with our team, our product team, to develop a vision that will turn these ideas into validated business models. And at every step of the way, guess what's important? Research. Research is the keystone interlocking all those pieces together. For all the activities, we draw from a multitude of different disciplines, from human factor psychology, business strategies, leadership, statistics, ethics, and of course, design. I hope you can see by now that UX isn't just the job. It's a skill, it's a competency, it's a way of thinking, a problem-solving process. That's what it is. And that's why I don't really care what it's called. Because at the end of the day, if we let go of the name, let go of the term UX research, CX research, whatever, at the end of the day, it's all about understanding people to unlock opportunities to better improve products, services, and processes. So the next time someone assumes UX is about making things pretty, you hopefully now have the vocabulary and philosophy on how to shift their perspectives. Who knows? Maybe you've done UX research in some capacity already, just without the UX title. Let's talk about why UX research. Well, let me start by telling you a story. In 2015, a San Francisco-based startup raised $120 million in venture capital. The product was a Wi-Fi-enabled, voice-controlled, sleek, sexy-looking product. But 4 years later, it failed. That company was called Juicero. They built a Wi-Fi-enabled, voice-controlled, sleek, sexy-looking, polished turd. For $700, the machine helps you squeeze juice packets. And not just any juice packets, Juicero juice packets. You couldn't use any other ones, and each of those packets costs $5 to $7 just to squeeze a few more bucks out of you. No pun intended. But wait, there's more.
Are you kidding me?
This is the silliest part. You had to be connected to Wi-Fi for it to work. No Wi-Fi, no juice. It didn't take long for people to realize that you could just squeeze those packets by hand. No expensive juice machine needed. Now, why do I tell you the story of Juicero? Well, hey, it's a sleek looking product and it looks pretty easy to use. There's one button, but that's just it. Doing research to improve a product's ease of use is just one part of the whole. Good UX doesn't mean it's valuable. Was there a real problem that needed to be solved? Now, some of you smart folk might point out, well, Kevin, what about people with Parkinson's or people without the hand strength to open the packets? Very keen question. I like where you're going with it, but we should be asking a different question. Is the problem with the machine or with the juice packets then? Anyway, come with me to the other side of the bay, and I'd love to tell you about our next story of when user research is used and why it's important. This is the MRI machine at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. The room itself would be dark with those flickering fluorescent lights right out of a horror movie. And for children, it was a scary experience. Kids would cry, they'd get anxiety, and wouldn't want to go in, rightfully so. And even when they got in, they wouldn't be calm enough for the machine, often leading to doctors repeating the scan. Now, this took a lot of time and money for the hospital, and it wasn't pleasant for the kids. Now, if the staff only gave Band-Aid solutions, they might have enticed the kids with candy or tell them, oh, it doesn't hurt, I promise. Okay, yeah, look at the machine. It's going to eat you. So, you know what the researcher did? They went to a design thinking workshop at Stanford University. He learned to build empathy with the patients and the parents. He identified those anxieties and fears associated with the MRI machine. Then he prototyped something called the Adventure Series. So what used to look like this turned into this. It wasn't a fancy tech solution. It didn't cost hundreds of millions of dollars. It was simply art, but art that solved the problem, removing fears in children. It helped the hospital not have to do those repeat scans anymore, not have to use anesthetics, which meant that you were also saving time and precious moolah. And the kids loved it so much that they wanted to go back inside. So those two stories I gave contrast what happens when you don't do research and what you're able to accomplish when you do research. Do. With UX research, we can design and develop with direction, answer questions, but also inspire new questions and opportunities, help people achieve their goals, and build stuff that people actually need the right way. Yeah, that's why UX research is crucial.
Just who is a UX researcher? You, badass UX leader, right there. Well, UX researchers come from all kinds of different backgrounds. The arts, design, social sciences, pretty popular, physical sciences, economics, data, English. Your homeboy has a biology and psychology degree. What background do you have? And it doesn't matter what background you have. I'd say it's a good thing that people have different backgrounds and different perspectives because everybody brings something different to the table, and that's what makes UX research so great. Okay. All right, enough of the pep talk though. What do UX researchers do and how do they do it? We identify user needs, behaviors, and motivations, inspire ideas through data and storytelling. We uncover what makes an experience intuitive, accessible, and delightful. And more importantly, we bridge the gap between our user's voice and our stakeholders and our teams so that we are the advocate for our users. That's what we do, but how do we do this? Well, through conducting primary and secondary research. We look for patterns and insights to inform product decisions. What we do, we hold the flashlight and we shine the light to guide our teams on where to go. And speaking of team, we collaborate with our partners, our stakeholders, to develop valuable products and services for users to achieve their goals. As the bridge between stakeholders and users, we hold a unique position to be both a leader and expert influencer. And some of the qualities that UX research possess, some of the things I've noticed in UX researchers are they're a people person. You gotta like people. Curious, compassionate, not just empathetic, but you're taking the step to make an action. You're humble, obviously a good listener, ethical, collaborative, inclusive. You want to work with others. Sometimes you need your alone time, I get it, but we gotta work for our teams too. And probably the most important quality to have in any kind of business setting, but especially for UX research, is a tolerance for ambiguity, uncertainty, precarity. There's honestly no need to stress about something you don't know the answer to because, hey, we can go find out through research. Get feedback, talk to your team, get ideas. It's gonna be okay. Some of the skills that UX researchers have are they're master storytellers, they're analytical, problem solvers, but also problem spotters. Communication skills, you gotta have those when you collaborate. Obviously, the technical skills of knowing your methods, experimental design, how to look for the right participants to do your studies, and not just knowing the methods, but knowing when and why you would use a method. That's more important, which we'll cover in modules 4, 5, and 6. And finally, some product management skills, tying in that business acumen. We'll learn all of this and more. Don't worry if you don't have the skills yet, you can always learn these either through this class, on the job, reading books, and all that. But if you have the right qualities, you're in the right place. Up until now, we've talked about the UX researcher, who we are, what we do, how we do things, but we don't work alone. So who are these people that UX researchers work with every day? What is a stakeholder? What does stakeholder mean? Well, a stakeholder is someone who has a vested interest in something, a particular area, product, an initiative. People who are part of a project team. Our BFFs, best friends forever, include product managers, designers, developers, data scientists, or analysts. These may be the 4 most common partners that you collaborate with on a product team, but everybody has different working styles. Every company, every team may have a different kind of partnership. So just remember to meet your teammates, ask them what their needs are, what their roles are, what kind of questions they have, and how you can best collaborate with them to help drive your product or initiative. Let's start with the product manager. They are the crucial stakeholder to UX researchers in any product team. We might work with them to define product vision and the goals and objectives, and why there's a particular business case to tackle a certain initiative. They also look at user opportunities, and they create accountability within the team to execute go-to-market strategies for the product. What they need is to make informed decisions for product strategy to maximize confidence and minimize risk. Maximize confidence, minimize risk. So research is going to be extremely crucial to what they need to do. Their goals are essentially to deliver impactful and successful products for both the customer and the company. So that's the gist of a product manager. How do you collaborate with them? Well, since they need research, they need validation, they need confidence, research will come into play. So sync with them to define goals, the scope, the objectives, the questions early, and get alignment on those topics. Don't just execute what someone tells you to do. Ask those questions, which we'll cover in Module 4, but ask those key questions to make sure they truly have the right problems in mind. Involve your product manager throughout your research process. Invite them to your studies. Have them watch participants. Get feedback on a study plan. Analyze data together. Like, do everything. Basically, it's our research, not my research. Okay? And by the end of it, nothing should be a surprise, right? And by the end of it, really, you have to give recommendations on clear actions to take. Next, UX designer, product designer, whatever you want to call it, they are a researcher's best friend. They're responsible for crafting prototypes, wireframes based on research needs and goals. They also work with research to develop many deliverables like personas, user journey maps, and whatnot. What designers need to know are data-informed decisions on design. What's the best design for the user? And solid user research will help guide them here. Their goals are to determine the best design approaches that are useful and meaningful to users and meet business needs. Right? You kind of see how everything falls into place between business and users' needs, and research is the keystone that holds every piece together. Now, how do you collaborate with UX designers or product designers? They might have project questions or requests. Sync with them just as you would with a product manager. Sometimes you might even include all three in the same meeting, or everybody in the same meeting. The more the merrier, okay? To get alignment. Same thing you would do with product managers, involve them in your research. To summarize, the designer is someone who will take your research insights, your recommendations, and bring them to life. Now, if you're at a startup, you might be doing both, right? If you're at a startup and you don't have a specific person to do each one, you might be doing both. Let's talk about the developer or engineer, software. They take product and design requirements and implement it into the code, and they actually build the product. So they're a really good source of knowing what is feasible or not. And in many teams, they include front end, back end, full stack, mobile platforms. So like either iOS or Android engineers, they have specific focuses. They really need exact design and product feature requirements. So research will help designers know what requirements there will be, and then the designers will kind of hand it off to the developer team. But I think that user researcher could do a good job of helping build empathy and reminding the developers like why we're doing it. The user stories that they come up with might not be real user stories that users care about. So that's why research is important, to kind of just bridge that gap. Remember the theme of the bridging gap? Their goal is to implement those requirements into code and start building. Just a side note, developers might need to build things quickly. And we hear stories of like,
oh, teams always build first and then test later, which is why UX is so bad and you have to save time.
The reason why developers need to build quickly sometimes is just like the business or like leadership forces them to come up with something. Like we need to come up with something quick. So don't blame them, blame the low UX maturity in the company. Okay, so that's the gist of the engineer or the developer. How do you collaborate with them? Same process, depending on the function. They can tell you if something is feasible to build or how resource intensive it will be. So then you can take those points and prioritize what can we feasibly do now and what can we feasibly do later. So give recommendations to design, and the designers will also give requirements to engineers. Finally, let's talk about our fourth BFF, the data scientists, aka analyst. The data scientists or analysts, they're separate from the product team, but they're invaluable. They track hyper granular user behavior to make inferences, projections, correlations, predictions, and trend analysis. And they might visualize data with a lot of models. Okay, so they know what's going on at a large scale. What they need are data, just like we need data. They focus on quantitative. They focus on the what is happening. When we triangulate with quantitative data, we build the whole picture. We give color to the what. So how do we collaborate with data scientists? They might not be as involved in your research, but they know what's going on. Sometimes they want to find out why. So sync with them and look at the data together, right? They know what and you know why. This way you might be able to distinguish expected user actions from actual user actions. You will cross-reference your samples in your main questions, making sure the way you collect data are going to be a little bit different. So just ask those questions first, like where did you get the data? How did you get the data? Who did you sample? Because it'll be a little different from how you do the qualitative side. Okay, so we went through the four most common stakeholders that you might work with on a product team. But at the end of the day, remember, just meet your teammates, learn their needs, understand how to collaborate with them, and go from there, because every team is going to be different. Involve them in your research. What's a day in the life of a UX researcher? Before I jump into it, I do have 2 YouTube videos that are, they're fun, more lifestyle videos about what the day in the life looks like for a UX researcher. One is pre-COVID and one was during COVID. So go check it out on my YouTube channel, 0 to UX, day in the life. With that aside, a day in the life, a week in the life, it varies greatly. Before I transitioned into UX research, I thought the majority of the day would be conducting research. Woo! Researchers conducting research. Who would have thought? I thought maybe 60 to 70% of my time would be talking to users. Well, in reality, most of your time is going to be spent meeting with stakeholders, planning about meetings about planning, scheduling research, scheduling participants, analyzing data, writing up your report, and then having more, you guessed it, meetings. Meeting. Okay, alright, maybe it sounds like I'm complaining about meetings.
Just a little bit.
But I just wanted to set the right expectations. Meetings are fine, I guess. But research is finer. Which sounds like funner. Because it is. So here's a couple of screenshots of my weeks at work from 2 different companies. And every week it's going to be very different. Some weeks I'm not doing any user studies, like some weeks I am. Full days of doing research, daily syncs, daily stand-ups, team meetings, weekly meetings, one-on-ones, all hands meetings, like different kind of So yeah, it's going to be a little different, but just to give you an idea of what a week in a life might look like. Now for a specific project, let's say you're doing a research study. Here's maybe an example timeline for a project. By no means is this representative of a lot of projects, but based on my experiences, a lot of them are going to be maybe a 2 or 3 week turnaround time. If you're doing longitudinal studies, like a longer diary study, or you're planning contextual field research, yeah, your timeline is going to be different, but let's just use this as an example. So day 1 of week 1, you're planning research, you kick off the study. We'll talk about how to do all these things in later modules. You plan to research, you start recruiting participants, you write it up, you finalize about a 2nd week, and then you run your studies. A lot of debriefing of your stakeholders, tweaking your study plan if you have to, and then you're going to spend some time analyzing your data, and then by the end, you're going to read out your recommendations, your final report, and there's your project. Now this is all fine and dandy, it looks so smooth and streamlined, but in reality, it looks more like this. So while you're running one study, you might be wrapping up a second study. While you're running the study, you might have to plan your next study. So we UX researchers are juggling projects here and there. Sometimes I'm doing 3 projects at the same time. So it really depends on your team's needs, your priorities, and things like that. What I'm trying to say is your schedule can be hectic. Therefore, it's important to have time management, prioritization, and communication skills, all of which we'll talk about in later modules. The research team structure. Typically, there are 2 types of models. The first is embedded, and the second is more of a consulting, centralized style. In the embedded model, this means you work on and support a particular team. So you're part of one team. The pros are that you become an area expert on that team, on that topic, and you get to build closer relationships with your team. You can also see projects go from being a little seedling into launching into the real world, right? This way you can track your impact more readily. You can see how things change at each step, and you can make those changes through research. The cons of the embedded model is that because you're working on the one team, on the one product, you don't really get the context or the bird's eye view of what's going on cross-functionally between teams. And really, your users don't care. Like, your users don't look at your product and say, oh, that's this team's work. That's this team's work. They look at your product and they see one holistic experience. So working on the one little thing, you might not get that bird's eye view. So you'll have to rely on collaborating cross-functionally to get that context. The second type of team structure is this consulting or centralized or studio model. You're kind of like a project consultant. Basically, you live here, but you support multiple different teams, right? So one day you can work for this team, and the next day you can work for this team, and so on. The pros of this are you get to work on many different kinds of problems, right? Many different kinds of products potentially, and build relationships with many different teams. The cons of the consulting model is, you do the research, get the insights, and you make the recommendations, and then you kind of say bye. So it's harder to realize whether your research actually made an impact, like whether or not they implemented the changes or not. So it's a little harder to track the impact. I guess the only way to do it is reach out, see, hey, how's the project going along? So those are the 2 different kinds of models. One's not better than the other, it's just what's needed for the team. For example, when I was working at Uber, I was embedded on a particular team looking at trucking companies. I got to see in depth one side of the trucking experience. So I had to collaborate with other teams to know, like, oh, well, the trucking experience spans different part of the user journey, and we're only focusing on one part of it. At the end of the day, the user's experience spans the holistic product or the service, right? It's agnostic of how we define our teams. Now, those are the 2 main ones. There is one more that I've worked on before, and this is a combination of both embedded and the consulting model. So when I was working at Google, I was embedded on the wearables team. So I only did research for that team. However, within that team, there were multiple sub-teams, and I would support all of them. So in a way, I was embedded on the bigger team, but I was consulting many of the smaller teams. So that's a hybrid of both. So we just covered how researchers fit into different team structures, the embedded model and the consulting model, and a hybrid model as well. At the end of the day, neither is better than the other, just whatever a team prefers. There are pros and cons to each. So just make sure to collaborate cross-functionally with your partners to get the bird's eye view of your entire user experience.
So you're learning UX research. Backpack on your back, books in hand, you're learning different types of methods, reading Steve Krug, reading Nielsen Norman articles, and then you come across different terms for types of research. Generative, formative, strategic. And then you come across evaluative, foundational, summative, exploratory, tactical, need finding, path finding. You suck.
When I first started learning UX research, I was like, what the heck? I read multiple articles on these terms so many times, and I was still confused. How to do generative research, how to do foundational research, how to do discovery research. And I'm like, the meat of the articles, they all talk about the same thing, but they all called it something different. So I was like, what, am I missing something here? What's the difference? And I kept trying to reconcile the differences. I'm like, they have to be different because they're called different names, right? And so today I'm going to define these terms once and for all so that you don't have to struggle the way I did trying to reconcile the differences between these terms. And I'm going to show you how they fit into the product development process, why they're different, at what stage do you do some of these research, and oh yeah, we're also going to learn about the product development process. And then I'll define all the different types of research along each phase of the development process. All right. So taking a look at this slide, we're going to start with a development process that has no business model. We start at zero. We identify a problem or an opportunity. Anytime there's a problem is also an opportunity. And then once we do some research, generate some ideas, we're going to start testing concepts. We're going to have some concepts in mind. We have, at this point, concepts, so they're unvalidated business model. And at every step of the way, we're going to do research. Research is crucial. Research is the keystone for every single step of this process. And then once we test these concepts, we're going to start solutioning. Once we have solutions, we're going to evaluate them and test them out. The ones that make sense, we're going to start actually deciding on those and test at scale and showing the business value of that development. Therefore, we're going to have a validated business model. Does it make sense to users? Does it make sense to the business? If so, we're going to decide on that, ship it, get feedback by doing research, iterate at every one of these steps, eventually going to market, launching it, right? And once you launch, we're not done yet. Once we launch, we still have to evaluate. This is summative research, which I'll explain. But once you launch, you're going to want to measure what is going on in the real world. Scale, is it meeting user needs? What are the reviews people are leaving? And then can we reach out into new markets? And I've separated this development process into two main buckets of research: foundational / generative research, and then evaluative research. Coming down here in the map, we identify a need, some user need or business need, define what it is that makes this project or product successful, start learning about our users, understanding deep dive into our users, what that existing market looks like, what about our competitors, what are they doing, what's that problem space look like. We're going to start brainstorming ideas, and this product vision, we're going to learn more in Module 3 of how to craft a UX strategy, and product vision is part of that. And then we're going to have defined those business values, and then you're going to see these diamonds. Now, if you learned double diamond from IDEO, well, you can do double diamond, but in reality, you're doing triple diamonds, quadruple diamonds, quintuple diamonds. You know, the process really depends on your team, your product, your launch, your deadlines, and everything else. And each one of these steps, research is involved. Every one of these steps: measure, learn, pivot, getting feedback, new ideas, building, getting feedback, iterating. New ideas mean iterating. Decide, getting feedback, shipping. So every single step, research is involved. Now, with that in mind, this is the product development process. Let's talk about the types of research. Now, I bucket types of research into two main ones. See, the card sorting right there. The first is strategic research, which is the same thing as foundational, generative, exploratory, need finding, pathfinding, discovery. All the same. They have so many different names. This is what I was so confused about. On the other hand, we have tactical research, aka evaluative research. Same term. Now, evaluative research has two kinds: formative and summative. Strategic research focuses on the big picture, the long-term adaptive goals. It's exploratory in nature. And this type of research usually includes understanding who your users are, building an understanding of something. It could be your user behavior, market opportunities, sentiment, Motivations, it is used as the foundation of everything else. On the other hand, tactical research is more that nitty-gritty stuff. It's the implementation of design, specific design recommendations that all serve to achieve the overall product or business strategy. And this is what we know as usability testing, A/B testing, where we have prototypes, we're designing and we're evaluating these concepts. Foundational research, as I mentioned, so many different names. This is focused on exploring that topic or problem that hasn't been identified. It's foundational because you're building up the foundation of knowledge on your users. Our users don't tell us what their problems are. It's our job to synthesize and spot those problems through research, and we can do them by interviews, contextual inquiries, observing what people do, when, where, why, how. Evaluative research is testing an idea, concept, or prototype with the purpose of improving an existing idea. So we're trying to see what works, what doesn't, and why. In Module 7, we'll talk about something I dub the research death spiral, the tactical research death spiral, which I've given talks at conferences several times on. Now, let's break that down. Evaluative research, there's two types. There's formative research, and then there's summative research. Formative research is what we know usually as evaluative research. So like usability testing, heuristic evaluations, this kind of research we do often and early. Alright, so when we talk about tactical evaluative research, usually we're referring to formative research, formative usability testing. Summative evaluation focuses on the overall experience. Usually this is quantitative, like once you launch something and see how it performs in the real world. Now we have data, now we have users using our product, we can actually track things. So we might track things like metrics, different metrics, sentiment, satisfaction, NPS, whatever we define as our success metrics. There is one more worth mentioning. This is called concept testing, or you might hear it being called concept validation. What is concept testing? Is to see if an idea resonates with users, to validate or invalidate solutions, or to see if the idea is valuable or not to find a product market fit. Now, concept testing, it has been really confusing to me because I thought it was a method at first. Concept testing itself is not a method, or it's not a methodology. And teams might call it validation. Now, this slight nuance is very biased, okay? When teams try and ask you to validate something, they're trying to tell you, go find out how to make this work. That's biased. Our job is to do both. It's what works and what doesn't work. Our goal should also be not just to validate, but to invalidate concepts. And that's something no one taught me, but now I know it's not just validation, it's invalidation. Concept testing looks to answer these kind of questions. Do users care about this idea? What works? What doesn't work? You might run concept testing after you come up with ideas, after ideation sprints that are based off of research, or you can just still test prototypes based on assumptions or best practices. How can you concept test? Well, like I mentioned, it's not any one method, so you can use any kind of method to test your concepts, depending on what your goals are. You can do surveys, interviews, focus groups, participatory design, usability testing. Just be sure to be clear on your goals. If it's just an idea, you shouldn't care about the usability just yet. Just whether the idea works or not. That's the purpose of concept testing. Don't usability test it. It doesn't matter if people can use it or not. At this point, it's just, is it valuable or not? And it can also just be an idea at this point. Right? You don't need prototypes for concept testing. You could just tell people what you have in mind, or you can ask people what they've done in the past. Here's the map of all the different types of research. And now I've added concept testing. Now, we're almost done with this. What terms should you use? I would say use whatever term your team is already using. Right? Now, for simplicity's sake, when you speak with leadership, like directors or VPs, I prefer to use the words strategic and tactical research. It just sounds more businessy. Now, on the other hand, if you're speaking with product teams, you might use the words generative or evaluative research. You don't want to confuse everybody, so just stick with what your team's already using. Pick one and stick with it. Now we learned the different types of research, their definitions, and how they fit into the product development process. And now we don't have to be all confused with these terms anymore. Woo! We'll be using these terminologies throughout the course and beyond.
In one episode of Hotel Hell, Gordon Ramsay visits a hotel that's having troubles with their business. The hotel manager and CEO were wondering why they were hemorrhaging money. The guests complain that the rooms have mold, that the beds are creaky, and the hotel manager just blames the guests as being too needy. Gordon Ramsay, obviously in disbelief, gathers a bunch of executives, the hotel executives, in a room, in a circle, and asks them, who is the most important person in the hotel? And at that moment, on the TV, you can literally see the faces of the entire hotel staff. They obviously hadn't thought about the guests. They were so focused on increasing revenue that they forgot to focus on the core problems. I know. How could they forget that? It's so obvious. We're learning UX. Okay, we're learning UX and how to be more user-focused and user-first, but this notion isn't obvious for many businesses. I think things are changing for the better, but in the thick of things, you'd be surprised how many businesses forget about their customers. How do we make sure our investors are happy? How do we make sure our staff are happy? They forget about the users. How do we shove ads in a more user-centered way? Ads make money. If we just shove it in a more user-friendly way, that's good UX. So that's good business, right? Am I right?
Hey, editor Kevin here. There's a camp of people who argue we must focus on the business needs first because, hey, whether we like it or not, we live in a world where we serve our capitalistic overlords. We work for them, they pay us, that's why we have a job. It's a good point, but I think it's missing the point. First, I ask, why is that the norm? Why should that be the norm? I own a business, and all I think about is you, the learners, the people I serve and I want to teach. And if I can get paid for my efforts, amazing. And a lot of small businesses focus a lot on their service to the customers. When they become large, somewhere along the way, suboptimal structural incentives lead them to take shortcuts, cut things where they shouldn't cut, and large businesses fail too. Just because I'm not a billion-dollar business doesn't mean billion-dollar businesses don't fail. Why? Because they couldn't keep up with what their customer demands or needs are.
Anyway, why should UX researchers learn about business? But first, what is a business? So let's look at the interwebs and look at a few definitions. A person's regular occupation, profession, or trade, an activity that someone's engaged in, commercial operation or company. What the heck are these definitions? Okay, here's another one. The goals of the business, that might be getting a little closer to defining it. The primary purpose of a business is to maximize profits for its owners or stakeholders while maintaining corporate social responsibility. Huh? The primary goal is to maximize profits for its owners and all right. I'm not satisfied with any of those definitions, especially the last one. Whoever wrote that shit? Let me share you a screen. Here's a traditional business thinking model, okay, where we have multiple problems and you try to come up with one solution. Here's what we do. Design thinking. And a little bit more of systems thinking these days too. We had to zoom out and think of systems as well, which we'll cover in this class. Okay, so design thinking. We first understand the problem through abductive divergent thinking. You diverge first, and then you identify multiple problems, and then you converge upon unique solutions, not a one-size-fits-all solution. In UX, we do this process and test our understanding. We test our solutions and we iterate and test those iterations. Okay, we know this as the double diamond approach. So going back to our original question, what is a business? A business solves a problem. It solves a problem, just like design. Design solves a problem. Design for the sake of looking pretty is just art. Design in everyday life solves problems. And businesses don't exist without customers unless
it's a gym membership because, you pay the gym membership, you don't show up, but they still make money, knowing that you probably won't stick with your resolution after the New Year's. Unless all of you, since you're bad at UX leaders, you do. But if you don't have customers, you don't have a business. So the next time people want to push customer problems to the side, you remind them of this fact. Businesses exist because you have customers who believe in your solution and you're solving problems for them. And if you forget about the users, you lose your users and then you lose your business. Remind them of that fact.
Ask any product managers what they do, and a lot of them will tell you they have no idea what they're doing. Not for any reasons of incompetence, but rather their job entails so much that they sometimes just go by a different name. Unofficially, a mini CEO. They're essentially CEOs of their own products and are more strategic in nature. Another role you might hear of is called the product owner. Product owners are more tactical, do the day-to-day execution of the vision. Some product managers are also product owners, but not all product owners are product managers, if you're still following. Honestly though, it has never affected my work, what their title was, nor does it really matter what their titles are called. I just involve them all in the process. I mean, just look at our own titles. UX researcher, experience researcher, design researcher, product researcher, user researcher, UX researcher, etc. You get the idea. So for simplicity's sake, I'm going to refer to product people that we work with as product managers or PMs. So what is product management? According to Atlassian's definition, it's a function that guides every step of a product's life cycle, from idea to development to execution to pricing. Kind of like conceiving a baby and raising it into adulthood. Of course, you wouldn't put a price on your baby, except the average cost of raising a baby in 2022 to the age of 18 is about $300,000. So you can put a price on your baby. Product management is the intersection of technology, business, and user experience. PMs deal with a lot of opportunity sizing, defining the vision of the product, and getting their team aligned on it, staying on top of market and competitive trends, and prioritizing features. You might be saying, hey, Kevin, that sounds a lot like what we do as user researchers. And actually, yes. But the role of PM really differs from small to large companies. At small companies, they might be hands-on, talking to users, prototyping, and doing everything, including what researchers and designers might do. At larger companies, they're going to be more specialized, where design team does design, research team does research, and helps the product owner kind of make that vision come true. As UX researchers, we are trained in researcher. PMs may or may not be, so it's our job to make sure that the research we all do is valid and reliable. If there's one book that will encompass what it means to think like a product leader with business sense, it is this one. Inspired by Marty Kagan, How to Create Tech Products Customers Love. It's about product management at the core. It's written by product manager for product managers. I can't say that their definition of user researchers is entirely accurate, but this is a great book if you want to understand what it means to think like a product leader, how to think like a product manager. So I definitely recommend this one if you want to get into the heads of how product managers think. But the book, is way more than just product management. I can't recommend it highly enough. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. And I think this quote by Albert Einstein really nails the fact that metrics aren't everything. We try to count things when they don't even matter. Physicists have been trying to find an all-encompassing, grand, unified theory of everything that attempts to explain all physical aspects of the universe with one equation. I think the closest they've gone so far is superstring theory, or M theory, which basically describes everything as made up as vibrating springs, and every vibration corresponds to a particular frequency, which corresponds to a particular particle. Anyway, like theoretical physics, there isn't a grand unified UX metric, but perhaps there is no need for one. People You and me are too complex to be boiled down into one metric anyway. We change behavior based on social context. Our moods constantly shift. Having said that, we operate in a business, so we'll need measurements to help keep track of our progress. However, as in the title of this lesson, measurements are not always the answer. Measurements are merely inputs and a way to minimize risk. And companies, by and large, are all about minimizing risk. Don't believe me? McKinsey, Harvard Business Review, and others have all done studies on companies and found that companies are definitely more risk averse, even if they say they like taking risks. And if we only ever focused on minimizing risk, we might miss out on bigger, more innovative opportunities. We end up too focused on testing, getting marginal incremental gains to make our investors happy, and we forget to focus on the outcome for our users. Being too metrics focused might actually take us off track. Literally, I'm not even joking, the kinds of conversations I hear at work are getting conversion rate from 1.2% to 1.3% in the next quarter. It bores the hell out of me. You don't have to measure everything, okay? Focus on the user need and everything else will fall in line. So remember to take a step back and ask yourself and your team, why are we going to measure this? What are we going to do with this information? Measure what counts. Measure what's important to driving strategy. And I'll see you in the next lesson. The product roadmap maps out how the product vision will be carried out on a high level. In the product roadmap, it should include research activities to get us there. And that's where the research roadmap comes in. It's almost like a roadmap within a roadmap. So in this lesson, I'll talk about what the research roadmap is, what it's not, how it's planned, why have one, and how to create one with an example that we'll do together. What is it? Well, a research roadmap, it shows what research you need to do and when. We don't go high level like product roadmaps. So if you ask me, honestly, a research roadmap is just another word for research timeline, when research happens. Annual roadmap planning happens during pumpkin spice latte season. That's either autumn if you're in the northern hemisphere, or spring flower blooming season if you're in the southern hemisphere in Namakwa. Jokes aside, not really a joke. Roadmap planning usually happens quarterly or every 3 months, but it's good practice to anticipate the future and think ahead too, especially if you have foundational research you need to make time for. However, before we get too deep into the parochial nature of roadmap planning, I want to tell you the expectations versus reality. There's a saying for driving on the racetrack: your eyes should look towards where you want your car to go for the next turn, not right in front of you. This helps orient your car better. But it's also useless to think about the next 5 turns if you haven't even finished the current one, because how you enter the next turn depends on how well you exit from the previous turn. Gotta carry that momentum. Don't just take it from me though. I posed this question to the User Research Collective group on Facebook. Does anyone ever stick to their timelines that they have planned? Overwhelmingly from the responses, the answer is no. No matter how far you try to plan out your roadmap, it's an exercise in futility, or adaptability if you're more of an optimist. In other words, there's really low confidence for sticking to the roadmap once you plan out beyond 3 or 4 months. Many times we are asked to plan out 2, 3, even 4 quarters into the year, the entire year. Realistically, there's no way, based on my experiences at many different companies, at different projects, over the past decade, there's not been a time where I've been able to stick to those timelines beyond a quarter. There's no way we're gonna stick to those timelines, but that's okay. If we only planned for the short term, we'll be working very reactively. It's okay to have a long-term vision. Anticipate what needs to be done to future-proof yourselves. Even if you don't stick to the timeline, at least we have a vision to reach for. If the plan doesn't work, change the plan, not the goal. That's adaptability. Just keep track of the work as you go, and be sure to have an open mind for when new insights spark new opportunities. Here's an example of what a research roadmap or timeline looks like. Month 1, project 1, month 2, etc. You're basically breaking down projects and you're putting them into a chart or a Gantt chart by month, and you're going to break the months down by week, and then you're going to go even more granular. We also make or update a research roadmap when new initiatives come about, so you can prioritize and reprioritize current objectives to fit those in. So that's what a roadmap looks like. Not rocket science. What it's not, on the other hand, and that's important to point out, what a research roadmap does not contain. Problems. We don't include problems that are outside of UX, like marketing, engineering, customer support. Those aren't included because those teams have their own roadmaps. It's strictly user research studies we have to worry about. That's not to say we won't collaborate with other teams, but this helps us with our focus. Of course, it's a discussion to have if you're gonna do research on your target audience, who are they, market sizing and whatever. A lot of the overlap might happen with your market research team as well. That's a discussion to have. You might have some copy messaging. Does this resonate with your target audience? You know, again, marketing or your UX copywriters. So always good to discuss with your team. And why have a research roadmap? Why is it important? The benefits of having a research roadmap are that we are creating a shared understanding of the research process itself. We get alignment on priorities, unveil why research is done at certain points. It itself can be an educational tool for your stakeholders. And we can get a bird's eye view of what kind of research you and your team does most often. We can figure out, hey, you know what, we spend a lot of time on fix-it testing. How can we get ahead of that type of testing? Make more time, carve more time out for foundational research. And we can use this information for improving our own research practice. The research roadmap isn't just about, here's what we need to do, here's what we need to do when, but you can kind of look at it as a tracking tool for your research practice. Oh, it looks like on this roadmap, everything is usability tested. Is that where our efforts are most valuable? Sure, we gotta do some usability testing, but what about the big questions? Where do those fit in? And that can help spark some discussion. Let's talk about the steps to creating our own research roadmap. We'll try an exercise together.
Make one together. Let's practice making a research roadmap together. So let's pretend that we're badass UX researchers in our team and we're doing quarterly planning. Fun. So we're gonna plan the next 3 months, or about 13-ish weeks. Some months have 4 weeks, some have 5, I don't know. Let's just plan 12 to 13 weeks. Let's pretend that we've spoken to our stakeholders, learned what projects need to be done and their priorities, and we're prepared to write up our timeline. Okay, so let's say that we have 2 projects going on for the next 3 months so far. Project 1, let's say that there is a major priority foundational study. Okay, we're trying to understand a segment of our customer base better to build something for them. Right? Try to understand their unmet needs and build a product for them. And assume that we haven't built anything yet, but that's the plan. Project 2, let's say the team is currently iterating on an existing feature. Okay, so something that is already live, but wants to test it before the launch. And the launch is going to happen in 3 months. Okay, so we got a bit of time for that. The team says, and they even said themselves, it's not the largest priority at this moment, but they still need it eventually. Okay, so in summary, we have 1 high priority project, and I would say this is a lower priority project. In real life, you're probably going to have more projects than 2 projects per quarter. Okay, but I just wanted to keep it simple for the sake of example. All right, so I suggest planning your roadmap starting with the highest priority projects. So let's start off with project 1, and let's, I color coded it in purple. I like to color code, but you don't have to. Let's say that we learned about it in the product planning meeting, but now we have to figure out the research details. Okay, we just know that the project is needed, but we haven't talked about the project at all yet. Over here in this different sheet, I have the roadmap. Now I have visualized it into month 1, month 2, and month 3 over here, and I've broken it down into weeks. I assume each month has 4 weeks. I know sometimes they have 5, but whatever. Just keeping it simple here for example. Okay, so let's start project 1. Let's just the only thing about project 1. And by the way, your timeline might vary based on conversations you have with your stakeholders. So it's actually best to plan your roadmap after having a kickoff meeting. But in this case, we're going to plan that into our roadmap too. So let's get that going as soon as possible, preferably week 1 of month 1. So let's say the kickoff. So reach project 1 kickoff. Let's make it purple. Happens in week 1. What else happens in week 1? Maybe some secondary desk research. Maybe after the kickoff, we understand who we need to recruit, so we might even start recruiting for the study. Okay, and maybe start writing up the plan. Draft out research plan. Okay, all of this week 1, and there's plenty of time to do all this in week 1. Week 2. Okay, let me do the wrap text. Okay, week 2. I'll pretend we did enough planning and aligning with our team, so we might want to do a dry run or a pilot study on week 2. Pilot study. Okay, maybe we're able to recruit someone for the study by then, hopefully. And maybe recruiting takes a bit longer than we anticipated, which often happens in real life. So we can add some buffer time for it. Okay, so maybe week 2 is like recruiting again, right? Recruiting again. So by the way, I have laid it out this way. You don't have to do this. In fact, I'm going to scroll down really quick because I created a different type of visualization. Something that I actually much prefer. It's kind of a calendar view, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And let's assume, like it's January 1st on a Sunday and then 2nd, 3rd, etc., etc. So this is how I like to have it. So if you were to use this visualization, it'd be like this. Project kickoff on Monday. Project kickoff. Oh my gosh, can't type right now. Project 1 kickoff. Let's make sure to designate that, color coded again. And then we might do some desk research on the same day, because your project kickoff isn't going to take the whole day. All right. Kickoff, desk research, maybe start drafting out your plan and recruit. So yeah, these things can happen first 2 days. All right. So like I said, this helps me more to plan my own research. People don't really need to see when you're doing stuff to the T, to like the exact day and stuff. So sometimes you could use kind of a more high level thing like, oh, this week we're gonna do this activity generally. But if you want to break it down into days, you could do that too by using this kind of visualization. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I like to do. But let's focus on this one for now. But if you like this version, let me know. I actually like this one better. Cool, so where are we? All right, so recruiting. Let's conduct a study. So again, let me back up. Project 1, we're trying to build a product. So let's think ahead 3 months. What do we want at the end of 3 months? Well, preferably we learn that during the kickoff, but I assume that we're gonna start brainstorming, developing an idea, concept testing it, and then iterating on that, all within 3 months. So this may move pretty quickly, as you'll see. All right, cool. Week 2, let's plan, recruit. Oh yes, what else? Pilot the study. Let's say that before we pilot this study, we obviously would like to align our, this also happens, feedback on plan. Okay, we also want to get the feedback from our stakeholders, make sure they're aligned, finalize the study plan. Hey, you know what? I know I'm going back and forth, but this is real time, baby. This is real time planning. Okay, finalize the study plan, pilot the study, recruit, keep on recruiting. And if we recruit fast enough, I actually prefer that we could maybe do a couple of sessions on week 2, if we could do that.
interviews or sessions. Let's not assume they're interviews. I assume this interview because we're understanding customer segments and their unmet needs. So yeah, whatever. Interview sessions. It's gonna happen. I know you don't usually choose methods beforehand, but you know, if you're trying to understand customers, you better interview them. Or that's definitely a method to use. Cool. All right. Conducted. Maybe we do more sessions in, this week too, more sessions. Maybe we have a debrief meeting with our stakeholders. Okay, this is all project one. Everything in purple is project one. Okay, I'm just saying sessions might take 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not sure, but let's allow time for it. As we're conducting, we want to provide constant debriefs on what we're noticing. After we're done conducting, we'll have data. Okay, so we'll need to spend some time synthesizing and analyzing data. Now, maybe an analysis can happen on week 3 after you're done with your sessions. Maybe it bleeds into week 4. I like to give myself some time for analysis, a couple days at least, and maybe you even have a co-synthesis session that you plan with your team. What's a co-synthesis session? I'll talk about more of that in a later module, but essentially it's just doing analysis with your teammates together, like a workshop. And then set a date for the final readout. I think if we had sessions on week 2 and 3, we could do analysis and have a readout by the end of week 4. So, readout. And hey, you know what? I'm going pretty aggressive here. All right, some of you are like, oh, I've done faster than that, whatever. Depends, right? This is the best case scenario. This is the best case scenario. Maybe your readout is on week 5. That's okay too. Just be flexible. There's no way you can plan 3 months out in advance without encountering some kind of hiccups. It always happens. Your timelines get extended. That's all right. That's all right. It happens. You just have to keep your stakeholders in the loop at all times. Okay. Now, this is a foundational study, remember. Since we're doing foundational research, I anticipate needing to do some brainstorming sessions, right? Ideation workshops with the team to take action on those foundational insights, brainstorming solutions that we can concept test later. So let's add that in after the readout. But hey, you've done hard work for these past 4 weeks. Let's do the workshop here, right? Brainstorming ideation workshop, week 5. Okay. Okay. Wow, look at that. We've just planned our timeline for our foundational study. Cheers. So that puts us here, week 5, week 6. And you know what? If it goes to week 6, I think that's still okay. We're still good on time here. Now, we will do the brainstorming session. We're going to prioritize ideas and then, concept test a few. If we want to validate those findings with a larger scale study, we might plan a survey also, and that could take another few weeks to do, depending on if we do the survey ourselves or if we're using a vendor. So at this point, the timeline can get a bit more cloudy. For the sake of this timeline, let's just pretend we're going mostly qualitative research, okay? But if you wanted to do quantitative research, I personally like to do quantitative research after doing qualitative research. Because after analysis, if you really want to see to what extent customers out there feel your insights, right? I might do a survey like here, right, month 2. So I could run these in parallel, right? Let's just put this in italic, survey. And surveys, they take a long time and they are tough, right? They're tough. Surveys are the hardest method to get right, easiest to get wrong. But let's say for the purpose of this study, we're going to stick with qualitative, just to make this easier for planning. Okay, usually after brainstorming and a sprint, the design team may start to conceptualize and prototype. We're going to need to work closely with our design partners to see how long they think they can do this and plan accordingly. Okay, so we're going to have to give more buffer time here. Let's do like gray boxes. Let's pretend it'll take them about a week to prototype. So, you know, this is not something we're doing, but designers prototyping, perhaps. Maybe they're fast, but let's give them some time too. Okay, so during week 7, we may do another kickoff, right? Kickoff part 2 for the same project. Okay, this is for project 1. Project 1 kickoff part 2. Why do we do this? Because now we're going to do concept testing. Okay, we can do this even if the prototypes aren't ready. So kickoff again. So it's not kickoff for the project, it's just, hey, here's the next phase of the research we need to do. So we've done the foundational part, now it's conceptualizing concept tests. So let's realign, let's call it realignment. You know, just for our sake, realignment part 2. Okay. Usually we'll know by now what kind of users we need to recruit. So I might put in the recruitment request here again. So recruitment for the next study, and we could pilot the following week, right? And you could even it could be sooner if you like, but let's just give ourselves some time because we have 12 weeks. And hey, you know what? If we reach week 12 or 13 and we're getting tight, we can shift some of these around. You could do that. This is not finalized. We're just planning for now. So let's do pilot plus sessions. Oh, no, I don't want that. I want this one. Okay. So now we're in week 8. Pilot and conduct more sessions. And hey, if the design isn't finished by then, we have to be flexible and shift the timeline a bit. We'll cross the bridge when we get to it. We have to be adaptive. And here's my pro tip for you. Whether it's on paper or just mentally preparing for it, always add buffer time whenever you plan projects this far out in advance. Anticipate roadblocks, okay? For roadmaps, you probably have roadmaps and roadblocks, so anticipate it so you're not stressed out when priorities change. It's a very Taoist mindset. Like Bruce Lee said, be like water. I imagine since this might be a concept test, we could probably knock out the sessions within the week and even start analysis the same week, okay? So maybe we're getting pretty aggressive. Now let's give ourselves some time to do, focus on sessions here. We'll do some debriefs here and there. And then week 9, let's do analysis. And this is a whole week, right? 5 days. Let's give ourselves a day or 2 or even 3 if you really need it to do the analysis, which means you could do the readout at the end of the week. Okay, readout for the concept test. That's what we're doing. I hope this is becoming a little clearer of how we plan this roadmap out. All right, so give this design team some time to iterate based on these findings. Okay, so the design team iterating. Okay, let's say that they're going to be doing this there. And we're going to repeat the process for evaluation, right? Let's say that we find the concepts that work and we scrap the concept ideas that don't work, and we're going to iterate and start building out the ones that do work. So in the last 3 weeks, let's do that, right? Let's repeat this, which can fill up the remaining 3 or 4 weeks here. Okay, so once we have the concepts in mind, we're gonna kick off for usability. Probably. I don't know yet, but I anticipate this is what's gonna come up. Kick off, recruit, conduct sessions, analysis, and then a readout. And there we go. This is, in one quarter, which is 3 months, we went from not knowing users to getting foundational knowledge, conceptualizing ideas, brainstorming and ideation. I love prioritizing ideas, which I'll teach you all later how to do, to prototyping something, to usability testing it, and then we can launch it, most likely, maybe.
Okay, so 3 months, we planned it out. Congrats. Awesome. And again, you may use this visualization if you prefer. Again, I prefer this because I like to just see like what days we're doing, sessions, conduct, like this, and conduct. And then here, debriefs. And then here, maybe here we do analysis. Whoops. Hey, that I might edit this out or not. You're just gonna see real time, and then let's read out here. Yeah, so stuff like this. So like this. I want to tell you something. Remember, we only did this for project 1. We still have project 2 to plan out. Let's plan with project 2. Let's not forget about that one. All right, let's show this baby some love. Having just one project for a quarter ain't gonna happen. Gotta have 2. Let me just remove this survey thing here for now. Okay, so let's see. Remember this project, the second project is evaluating an existing feature unrelated to project 1, let's assume. And they don't need it immediately. But that doesn't mean they don't not need it immediately. Okay, it just gives us some flexibility for when to do this project number 2. We definitely don't want to leave it for the last minute, okay? Because the team is still waiting for insights. And maybe because we might find some insights that affect the timeline overall. Okay? It's more of a nice, it's more of a, it's nice to have data soon, but prioritize your large project first type of situation. So on my roadmap, I'll create, I'll just use these bottom rows for second project. I'll take a look at project 1, right? Where do you think we're the busiest? Well, I definitely don't want to conduct 2 different studies during the same week. Okay, so when we're conducting studies for project 1, I don't want to be conducting studies for project 2. Let's stagger that timeline. Okay, the kickoff for project number 1 is on week 1. Kickoff for project 2 could probably happen week 3 or 4, depending on how much work you think you'll have. Then boom, add in recruitment, conducting, analysis, and readout components. All right, so let's see. This is what it might look like. What color was project 2 again? It was blue, okay. So this color. Kickoff for project 2. All right. Maybe instead of that, I could just make all these cells blue text color. Okay. So kickoff, recruitment for project 2. Maybe draft plan. You see, all these components are the same for any kind of research study. Draft out research plan. Let's wrap text. Sorry, you're just gonna see this live, raw, unedited. Draft out research plan. Get feedback on research plan. Finalize. Oh my goodness. Okay, here we go. Finalize research plan. Thank you for your patience as you watch me fumble around this Google Sheet. Yeah, we're piloting a study. This goes first, right? Finalist research plan, pilot the study, and what else would we have? Maybe more recruiting. Who knows? And since it's week 2, we could probably do more sessions. Yeah. And since we have a bit of time to play with, maybe we don't have to do all our sessions on the 1 week. If it's a iteration project, I assume it's usability. It's some kind of evaluative testing, right? So it's not going to be as long. It depends, right? Everything depends. You could be recruiting very niche participants. So if you need it, you can have more sessions on week 5 here. You can also do analysis, and then maybe the readout here for the project 2. For project 2. Okay, boom, done. After you finish this study, keep track of the findings and recommendations, and make sure to inspire the team to keep on iterating. They might need you for a second round, so leave your timeline open for that possibility, right? So now we have a lot of buffer time. Maybe the design team for project 2 is iterating here, and maybe we can use all this time here to do an additional round if they require it. Okay, so that's a lot. Thank you for sitting through this one. Hopefully that gives you an idea of how one might plan out a research roadmap for a quarter. Again, this was purely hypothetical with very little information about the projects themselves. In reality, you would have more information that could better help you plan out the timelines. Okay, just remember, the timeline serves as a guidepost to get certain milestones done, but they aren't set in stone. Roadmaps are not set in stone. Remember Bruce Lee's quote, and be prepared to adapt. Because in my experiences, and this is a true story, I have planned entire studies out, and in the middle of conducting, a project could completely get pulled for whatever reason, and you'll have to overhaul your timeline on the spot. Okay, I've had projects scrapped out of thin air. Okay, so remember, plan it out, keep it open enough for any changes, and remember to add some buffer time, either literally on paper, not literally on paper, but the spreadsheet, or just mentally in your head, like just mentally prepare some buffer time. For example, for this video, for this lesson, I was gonna write out this timeline exercise on a whiteboard. Look at this, I have everything here. And I thought, okay, this is kind of a pain. So I decided to adapt and do this on a Google spreadsheet, which is probably what you're gonna be using. Like Google spreadsheet, you might use Coda, other tools. I won't talk about the tools you use for roadmaps. You could use anything, honestly, just whatever your team uses. Okay. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next lesson.